Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Bio-6 Digestive System lecture. At the end of part 1, we finished our discussion of carbohydrate metabolism, meaning the different types of metabolic reactions that your body does when you eat carbohydrates. At the beginning of this part, part 3, we're going to start a discussion of triglyceride metabolism, the types of chemical reactions that your body does when you eat triglycerides. Let's start off with a review of exactly what triglyceride molecules are. We talked about triglyceride molecules. Well, we talked about them earlier in this lecture, but we initially talked about triglyceride molecules earlier in the semester when we talked about the lipid macromolecules. So remember that lipid macromolecules are hydrophobic, and one type of lipid macromolecule are called the triglycerides. And essentially, triglycerides are the molecules of fats and oils. So any fats or oils in your body are made out of triglyceride molecules, and also any fats or oils in the food you eat are also made out of triglyceride molecules. And just some examples, think of vegetable oils around your kitchen like corn oil or safflower oil or olive oil. Those are made out of triglyceride molecules. And think of fatty foods in your kitchen, cheese and butter. Those are both made out of milk fat. And cooking lard is made out of animal fat. As a matter of fact, they don't picture it here, but think of a piece of bacon. It has that white part of the bacon, the marbling of meats they call it. That's also animal fat. Anyway, triglycerides are fat molecules, and they are oil molecules. And here's what the structure of a triglyceride looks like. Remember, each triglyceride molecule is made out of one glycerol molecule joined to 3 fatty acid molecules. The glycerol molecule is a 3-carbon molecule, like you can see there, 1, 2, 3. And the fatty acids, or at least the most part of the fatty acid, is a long chain of carbons linked together with hydrogens attached to all the carbons. Now, I should point out something here. If all the carbons in the fatty acid just have a single covalent bond between them, we call that a saturated fatty acid. So this one is a saturated fatty acid, and this one is a saturated fatty acid. Only single covalent bonds between the carbons. But if the fatty acid has a double covalent bond between any of its carbons, we say that this is an unsaturated fatty acid. So yes, this is a saturated fatty acid, this is a saturated fatty acid, and this is an unsaturated fatty acid. All right, and this actually relates to how healthy animal lipids, animal triglycerides are compared to plant triglycerides are, healthy in terms of our own health. And here's what it is, that the saturated fatty acids are less healthy for you, and the unsaturated fatty acids are more healthy for you. And so if you look at the web handout, it explains it, that lipids that we get from animals, like the white part of meats, cooking lard, or fatty foods like butter and cheese, lipids that we get from animals in our diet have more saturated fats, and animal products also have a molecule called cholesterol, and those are unhealthy for us. Cholesterol and saturated fats are unhealthy for us. Why? Because they lead to atherosclerosis. We talked about atherosclerosis earlier in the semester when we did the cardiovascular system. But this represents an artery right here, this blood vessel. And you can see this artery is almost totally blocked by this plaque. A plaque is a deposit of cholesterol and fats that can build up inside arteries. And obviously that's not healthy because it's blocking the blood flow through that artery, that the plaque is. And atherosclerosis is this disease where a person gets a bunch of plaques in their arteries, and it can cut down on blood flow to their organs. In particular, it can lead to a heart attack if the arteries that get blocked are in the coronary arteries of the heart, or atherosclerosis can lead to a stroke if the arteries that get blocked are the arteries in the brain. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that if you get your lipids from animal sources like meats and cooking lard and butter and cheeses, animals have cholesterol and they have saturated fatty acids, both of which get built up in your arteries to form these plaques. Whereas the lipids that you get from plants, like cooking oils from plants, vegetable oils, are much healthier because plants do not have any cholesterol, so you're not getting any cholesterol in plant oils, to help form plaques. And also, plants tend to have more unsaturated fatty acids in their triglycerides, and the unsaturated fatty acids don't contribute to the formation of plaques. Okay. Anyway, so when you eat, to summarize here, if you when you get vegetable oils in your diet or animal fats in your diet, you're getting triglycerides in your diet. And what we're going to talk about in this section of the lecture is the metabolism of those triglycerides. What sort of reactions happen to those triglycerides in your body once you eat these triglyceride-based foods, these fats and oils. Okay, let's start. So let's say you have a meal that has a lot of triglycerides. Maybe you put a bunch of butter on something with some cheese and put some cooking oil on top of it. Sounds like kind of a weird dinner, right? But let's say you ate a meal that was very high in triglyceride molecules. Okay, so here we see this. Here's the gastrointestinal tract in yellow right here. So you're putting these triglycerides from the foods inside your GI tract. And your GI tract digests them. It breaks the triglyceride molecules apart into fatty acids, these little purple-looking things here, and the glycerol molecule, which is this blue-looking thing right there. And we talked about how the digestion of triglyceride works earlier in this lecture. Remember, a substance called bile is involved to emulsify the fat globules in your GI tract, and there are enzymes involved also that break apart the triglycerides into the separate fatty acids like you see there in the glycerol. So let's not go into that in detail, but just take it as a fact that in your GI tract, the triglyceride molecules are digested, like you see here, and they get digested into fatty acids and glycerol. Well, those are eventually absorbed into your bloodstream, and so that's what you see right here. Some of these fatty acids in purple, and the the fatty acids there in purple, and the glycerol in blue right there from the digested triglycerides. And we're going to focus on what happens to the fatty acids, the metabolism of the fatty acids. Let's not worry about the glycerol. Okay, so what happens to those fatty acids? Well, several possible things can happen to them. Your cells can use those fatty acids as an energy source, as a fuel molecule, to do their cellular aerobic respiration. Remember, cellular aerobic respiration, your cells take in fuel molecules from the blood and then break those molecules down into carbon dioxide and water to make ATP for themselves. And you may say, wait a minute, you told us glucose was the fuel that cells use for cellular aerobic respiration. Well, glucose is their favorite fuel, but cells can also use fatty acids as a fuel molecule for cellular aerobic respiration. Fatty acids are a close second. The cells prefer to use glucose, but a very close second is fatty acids. Another thing, so that's one thing that can happen to the fatty acids that come into your bloodstream. They become fuel for cells making energy for themselves with cellular aerobic respiration. Another thing that can happen to those fatty acids is they can be stored. What I mean by this is cells can take in fatty acids from the bloodstream, and the cells can link those fatty acids to a glycerol, and so essentially cells are now storing them in the form of triglyceride molecules. Your cells can use those fatty acids in your blood to make their own triglyceride molecules. Now, any cell can do this. Any cell can take in those fatty acids and make triglycerides. Oh, I should mention the cells can also make phospholipids out of them. Phospholipids also contain glycerol with fatty acids attached. Anyway, so your cells can take in fatty acids from the blood to make their own triglycerides or own phospholipid molecules. But just as kind of a review question, does anybody remember the cell type that specializes in storing triglycerides for us, that specializes in storing fats for us? And yes, you're correct. That's called adipocytes, which are the cells of adipose tissue, fat tissue. Yeah, their job is to store a lot of triglycerides for us. Anyway, cells of all types, including, but especially adipocytes, can take in triglycerides and store them by converting them into, take in fatty acids and store them as triglycerides or phospholipids. Oh, incidentally, the adipocytes if they see that your cells are running low on energy, like maybe you don't have enough glucose in your blood, your adipocytes can then break down their stored triglycerides and put those fatty acids back into the bloodstream to make those fatty acids available to your cells to use as a fuel source, in situations where your blood sugar, your glucose might be low. Okay, so those are, this shows a good summary of most of the parts of triglyceride metabolism. Just to review, when you eat foods that contain fats or oils, you're putting triglycerides in your GI tract, and then your GI tract digests them into fatty acids and glycerol. Those eventually get absorbed into the bloodstream. The fatty acid molecules from the triglycerides can be used as a fuel molecule for cells doing cellular aerobic respiration, but they can also be stored inside cells by being, fatty acids can be brought in and be built up into triglycerides. Okay, but there's one more aspect of this triglyceride metabolism that we need to add to this diagram before it's complete. And this last aspect of triglyceride metabolism has to do with the liver. The liver has a special type of triglyceride metabolism that we haven't put into this chart yet. So let me bring in the liver into this picture. So what is this special aspect of triglyceride metabolism that the liver does? Well, the short answer is making cholesterol from the fatty acids. The liver can take in fatty acids from the blood, and the liver can use those to generate cholesterol molecules. And here's a cholesterol molecule. We talked about cholesterol when we did the chapter on lipid macromolecules earlier in the semester. When we did that chapter, we learned about steroid lipids. Steroid lipids are a type of lipid, type of hydrophobic macromolecule that are made out of 4 fused rings of carbon. And so you can see cholesterol as a steroid, 1, 2, 3, 4 fused rings of carbon. Anyway, so cholesterol is a steroid lipid, and it's manufactured by your liver. And why is the liver making cholesterol? Well, cholesterol has uses in the body. As one example, all of your cells have some cholesterol in their cell membranes. It's just sort of a normal part of cell membranes is to have some cholesterol molecules in them. Another good and useful function of cholesterol in your body is it's the starting material for endocrine glands to make steroid hormones. Anyway, the point here is that having some cholesterol in your body is a natural and good and normal healthy thing, and your liver is the organ in your body that manufactures cholesterol, and the liver manufactures the cholesterol from fatty acids in the blood. So yeah, that's another thing that fatty acids can happen to the fatty acids in your blood. Your liver can take them in and manufacture cholesterol molecules out of them. Now, once the liver has manufactured the cholesterol molecules, the liver has to ship them out into the bloodstream so that those cholesterol molecules become available to your cells, so your cells can put them in their membranes or use them to make steroid hormones. And so here's what happens. The liver packages up the cholesterols that it makes into a particle, a globule, called a low-density lipoprotein, LDL for short. And if you look in your lecture handout, it defines that this way. It's a low-density lipoprotein is a globule made out of lipids, mostly cholesterol, lipids, and some protein also. And that the liver secretes these LDLs into the bloodstream to transport the cholesterol and some fat molecules to other tissues in your body. And here we're going to see that happen. The liver secretes this LDL with all those cholesterols in it into the bloodstream. The LDL travels through the bloodstream, and then cells of your body take in LDLs to use those cholesterol as part of their cell membrane or to make steroid hormones. Okay, so that's all well and good. Now, the cells of your body can also package up cholesterol and send it back to the liver. So if this cell right here is going to do that, here are some cholesterols that it has. When cells package up cholesterol to send back to the liver, they package the cholesterol into a particle, a globule called a high-density lipoprotein, or HDL for short. And so just to review quickly, so when the liver is sending out cholesterol into the bloodstream, the liver's cholesterol is packaged as a globule, as a particle called a low-density lipoprotein, an LDL. Those go out to the cells. But when cells are sending cholesterol back to the liver, the cells package the cholesterol in a particle called a high-density lipoprotein, an HDL. Anyway, so the HDLs get secreted by your cells into the bloodstream. The liver takes in these HDLs. Now, why does the liver take them in? Why does the liver need the cholesterol? Well, the liver uses the cholesterol in those HDLs as the main ingredient for making bile. All right, so let's remember bile for a moment. Bile is a substance that's made by the liver, and the liver sends the bile down into the GI tract. And the purpose of the bile is to help digest fats in the GI tract. Matter of fact, let's have a view of the liver doing that. Here's the liver up on top, and it's making bile, and you see that bile being sent down into the small intestine right here, to help with the digestion of fats. Now, some of the bile that the liver makes gets sent down to temporarily be stored inside the gallbladder, but even eventually that bile in the gallbladder will eventually get squirted down into the small intestine to help with fat digestion. So eventually all the bile that the liver manufactures ends up in your GI tract. So anyway, what I was saying is the main ingredient for bile is cholesterol. And so that's why the liver needs these HDLs. That's why the liver takes in these HDLs, because it uses the cholesterol inside the HDL as the main ingredient for making the bile. Okay, now here's the thing about these HDLs and these LDLs. The HDLs are considered good, healthy cholesterol in your body. In other words, the cholesterol that's inside these HDL particles is considered good and healthy cholesterol in your bloodstream, whereas the cholesterol that's in the LDLs, the ones that the liver puts out into the bloodstream, is considered unhealthy cholesterol. Or to say the same thing slightly simpler, HDLs in your blood are considered healthy and LDLs are considered unhealthy. Now, why is that? Well, it comes down to atherosclerosis. The cholesterol inside your LDLs can become plaque molecules and so contribute to atherosclerosis. But the cholesterols in the HDLs do not contribute to forming plaques. And why is that? Because these cholesterols are exiting the body, right? These HDL cholesterols are going to be taken out of the bloodstream by the liver, converted to bile. The liver will send that bile into the GI tract, and eventually the contents of the GI tract leave your body, right? You know, when you defecate, when you make feces, that's leaving your body. So eventually what I'm saying is these cholesterols in the HDLs are leaving your body, so they can't contribute to making plaques in your arteries. Yeah, so that's why they consider, one second. There we go. That's why they consider the HDLs the healthy cholesterol in your bloodstream, and that's why they consider the LDLs the unhealthy cholesterol, because this cholesterol is going to stay in the body, so it can contribute to formation of plaques. Okay, so let me do again a quick summary of lipid metabolism. When you eat fats or oils, you're putting lipids into your GI tract. Your GI tract breaks them down into glycerol and fatty acids. The fatty acids get absorbed into your bloodstream. Some of those fatty acids are used by fuel for your cells doing cellular aerobic respiration. Others are taken in for storage by converting them into triglycerides or phospholipids. But the adipocytes, which store a lot of those triglycerides, can then break down their stored triglycerides and put those fatty acids back into the bloodstream if your cells need more fuel, like if you're having low blood sugar, that can happen. But remember that, I don't think I have it as part of this diagram, but the liver has a special kind of triglyceride metabolism or fatty acid metabolism. The liver can take in, actually I bet I can find it. There we go. The liver can take in fatty acids from the bloodstream to manufacture cholesterol. All right, well, that is all we're going to cover for triglyceride metabolism. We're now going to finish off this part of the digestive system lecture by talking about something called basal metabolic rate.
Okay, so let me introduce this part about metabolic rate like this. people come in all body types, and some people just naturally seem to be very slender, very skinny. A lot of people have more or less an average body type, and some people seem to naturally be heavy. And with some of these people who seem to be naturally skinny, maybe you know people like this, they seem to be able to eat anything they want to, and they never put on a pound. I got this friend, Paul, and every time I have dinner with him, he just eats these massive amounts of dessert. He has like ice cream and chocolate shakes, and he just eats all this high-calorie dessert food, and he's just totally skinny all the time. And other people, it's just the opposite. Other people, they just look at a donut and they gain a pound. So why is it that some people just seem to never gain any weight despite eating a whole bunch of food, and other people seem to gain weight easily, even if they eat very little food? Well, it comes down to something called metabolic rate, which is the amount of calories that their body uses every hour. And here's the way that works. So when you eat foods, you're getting these molecules that we talked about, like carbohydrates and fats and proteins are in the food. Well, those molecules in the food just naturally have energy in them. All molecules contain energy. And when we're talking about the energy in the foods and that our body uses, they use this term calories, but calories basically means the same thing as energy. Okay, so yeah, when you eat foods, you're putting those molecules in your body, so you're putting the calories, the energy from those foods into your body. But your body burns up energy also to move your muscles, and for your brain to think, and for your heart to pump your blood. That takes energy. So, you put energy in when you eat, and your body burns up energy in its normal functioning. So if a person has a high metabolic rate, that means their body burns up lots of calories per hour. And so if you think about that, that's going to keep that person slender, because when they eat their food, their body essentially burdens up those food molecules for energy before their body has a chance to store it as fat. But if a person has a low metabolic rate, if the person does not burn up calories, burns up very few calories every hour, then their body does not burn up the molecules in the food for energy, and so their body has a chance to store them as fat. So the point is here, with metabolic rate sort of determines whether a person's going to be naturally slender or naturally large. And people with high metabolic rates tend to be the ones who are naturally slender, and people with low metabolic rates tend to be the ones who put on weight easily. Okay, so metabolic rate is how many calories the person burns, the person's body burns every hour. There are actually two subcategories of metabolic rate. One is called basal metabolic rate, and the other is called total metabolic rate. This one's called BMR, and this one's called TMR. The difference is essentially this. Basal metabolic rate is how many calories your body burns per hour when you're relaxing, when you're not exercising. And total metabolic rate is how many calories your body burns through every hour when you are doing some activity. And as you might guess, the TMR is always going to be higher than the BMR, right? Because you burn up more calories when you're exercising than when you're just relaxing. Okay, but let's look at the basal metabolic rate first. So this is the one, calories that your body burns up per hour when you are resting, when you're not exercising. Okay, so I'll tell you about how many calories that is, but you don't have to memorize this number. I'm not going to quiz you on this, but a normal average metabolic rate is between 60 to 70 calories per hour. So that's how much energy your body, an average person's body, uses when they're just relaxing. Now, you might say, well, if they're just relaxing, just sort of sitting on the couch or something, why is their body burning any calories at all? Well, if you think about it, even when you're relaxing, your heart has to beat to pump your blood, and that takes energy. And you have to use your inspiratory muscles to breathe air in and out, and that takes energy. And your brain is still thinking about stuff, and your brain takes energy to do your thoughts. And there's also your body heat. Your body has to expend calories to keep itself warm. And so, all those require energy. So, even when you're relaxing, your body needs calories. And like I said, somewhere between 60 to 70 calories per hour is a typical basal metabolic rate. Okay, now, there are things that can control what a person's basal metabolic rate is. And the major thing that controls it is a hormone that comes out of your thyroid gland called thyroid hormone. We studied this hormone when we talked about the endocrine system a few weeks ago. Here you see a picture of it, and you don't have to memorize its exact structure, obviously. But this is a hormone made by the thyroid gland. It has several different names. It can be called thyroxine, or T4, or thyroid hormone. It all means the same hormone here. Oh, and just as an aside, you might remember from the endocrine lecture, this thyroid hormone has these iodine atoms as part of its structure. The little I's are iodine atoms. And as far as I know, this hormone is the only molecule in the body that has iodine atoms as part of its structure. I don't know why this hormone is special in that way, but it is. And that's why you need to get a little bit of iodine in your diet, is so your thyroid gland can make this hormone. Anyway, this thyroid hormone, this thyroxine, is the major thing that sets a person's BMR. So here's the way it works. Remember that your cells take in glucose as their major energy fuel. And so cells, here you see a cell taking glucose from the bloodstream. And the cell is essentially burning up that glucose for energy. Well, thyroid hormone is what tells your cells how much glucose they're supposed to take in from the blood and burn up for energy. In other words, thyroid hormone sets how quickly your cells are burning up glucose energy. So if a person's thyroid gland, for whatever reason, makes large amounts of thyroid hormone, here's what happens. The high amount of thyroid hormone tells the person's cells, hey, take in lots of glucose from the blood. And so that person's cells are constantly burning up glucose at a very fast rate. And so that person burns through many calories per hour, because the glucose is part of their body's energy store. So they're burning through a lot of energy per hour. And so, if a person has high thyroid hormone levels for whatever reason, that person's going to have a high BMR. And so that person's going to tend to be naturally slender. They basically burn through their nutrient molecules like glucose. They burn through them before their body can store them as fat, so the person tends to be slender, like my friend Paul. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, if a person's thyroid gland, for whatever reason, naturally makes low levels of thyroid hormone, that person is going to have a low BMR. And here's why: because their thyroid hormone, since they have low levels of thyroid hormone, their cells take in glucose only very slowly. Their cells do not burn up very much glucose for energy. And so the body, therefore, will have a chance to store up that glucose because it's not being burned up very much, and the body converts it to fat. So people with low thyroid hormone levels have a low BMR, and so those people tend to put on weight pretty easily. Okay, so your basal metabolic rate is mostly set by your level of thyroid hormone. There are some other things that also can affect a person's BMR. This is a table I stole from your textbook. One of the things here is age. The younger you are, the higher your BMR generally is. Kids just seem to burn up a lot of calories per hour. But the older you get, your metabolic rate slows down. And so when you get into your senior years, your BMR decreases. And that's why a lot of people, when they get into their older years, tend to put on weight because their BMR is slowing down. And so the way that works, they don't burn up their food calories for energy, so their body stores them as fat. What sex you are also has an effect on BMR. Males tend to have a slightly higher BMR than females do. And so males tend to have slightly lower levels of body fat than females do. And this table says surface area, but I just said size. People who tend to be smaller individuals naturally tend to have a slightly higher BMR, and people who tend to be larger, like taller individuals, tend to generally have a lower BMR. And I'm not sure why that is, but that's also a general effect. All right, so again, BMR is calories that your body uses per hour when you're resting. The other type of metabolic rate is called total metabolic rate, TMR, and that's how many calories your body uses per hour when you're doing some activity, like when you're exercising. So not surprisingly, the TMR is always going to be higher than the BMR because when you're exercising, your muscles are burning through a lot of energy, and so that's going to be more energy per hour. All right, but the exact TMR level, how many calories you burn per hour, depends on what type of exercise you're doing. Like here's an aerobics class, and so how many calories per hour is that? Well, it depends on what level of aerobics class you're doing, but in a typical aerobics class, it might be 300 or 400 calories per hour would be your TMR. And you don't have to memorize that number. I was just giving that out as an example. But let's contrast that. Remember that if you're just relaxing, then you're using your basal metabolic rate, which is around 60 to 70. And so if you're doing an aerobics class, you're burning through about 5 times more calories per hour than if you were relaxing. Well, the next slide is going to be a big list of the TMRs for various types of exercise. And again, you don't have to memorize any of these. I just thought it was kind of interesting. So here you can see if it's they say a heavy aerobic class, they mean like a very energetic aerobic class, about 544 calories per hour that is your TMR. If it's a medium aerobics class, around 340 calories per hour. This I thought is interesting. Basketball, they said vigorous basketball, almost 700 calories per hour. That's a lot of calories burned up per hour. What's this one here? 659. Is that cycling? I guess that's cycling very quickly. What are some other ones down here? Running or jogging at 10 miles per hour. Wow, that's almost 900 calories per hour. That's kind of amazing. Writing. If you guys are taking notes right now, you're writing, and so it looks like your TMR would be about 118 calories per hour. Okay, well, so that's the gist of TMR, how many calories you burn up per hour doing various activities. Any questions on BMR or TMR? All right, well, we'll finish up our digestive system lecture by talking about something called energy balance. Okay, so remember when I was talking about BMR and TMR a moment ago, I said that when you're eating foods, you're taking molecules from those foods into your body, like proteins and carbohydrates and lipid molecules in the foods go into you. And those molecules naturally have energy. So when you're putting those molecules into your body, you're putting energy into your body. But then your body burns through energy to do various activities like heart beating and using muscles if you're exercising. So you have a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of calories that come into your body from your food that your body gains from eating the foods, but your body also burns through calories in doing its normal body processes. So let's talk about the balance between the calories in, from the foods and the calories that get burned up, the calories out, so to speak, from your activities. So here's a gentleman right here, and he eats 4,000 calories per day. kcal just means calories. So he takes in 4,000 calories per day into his body, but it looks like he's not very active, and so every day his body only burns through 2,000 calories. So that's 2,000 extra calories that come in every day that he doesn't burn off. In that situation, when there's more calories going in than are being used, you gain weight. And I've said why that is. If your body is not burning through those molecules, the body stores them as fat. So yeah, if calories in is higher than calories used up, then you gain weight. And here's the opposite scenario. This woman here, she takes in 2,000 calories per day, but it looks like she's very active, and so her body burns through 3,000 calories per day. She's going to lose weight. Anytime you use more calories than you take in, your body has to make up that deficit by burning through your own molecules, which is mostly your body fat. And so she's going to lose weight. She's going to lose body fat because she's using more calories than she's taking in, so her weight decreases. And so these are very basic concepts within gaining weight or losing weight. If you take in more calories than your body uses, you gain weight. If you use more calories than you take in, you lose weight. And like I said, these are very well proven concepts of how our body gains or loses weight. And the reason I'm emphasizing that these are true rules is that sometimes people want to lose some weight for health reasons. And sometimes you see these crazy diets that say you can eat as much as you want and still lose weight. And so I'm telling you, be very suspicious of any diet that advertises itself like that. That's just not the way the body works. If you eat as much as you want and take in thousands and thousands and thousands of calories and don't burn off the number of calories, you're going to gain weight. And so you may look at this, 25 pounds lost in only 2 weeks, and sort of implies that you don't have to do any exercise or anything. You'll just eat all this food and still lose weight. You just be very suspicious of this. It just goes counter to these well-established rules of how the body manages its weight. Okay. I was going to mention something else before I leave this. Let me see if I can jog my memory 1 second here. I remember what I was going to say. So if a person decides that they do want to lose some weight for health reasons, what does that mean? Well, it means that they have to either reduce the amount of calories that are coming in, they have to eat less, or they have to increase the amount of calories that their body is burning up every day, which means exercise more. So, or they can do both. So they have to either eat less or exercise more, or do both of those. Now, studies have shown that people are more successful at losing weight if they focus on eating less, not exercising more. I mean, exercise is very healthy, but if the goal is to lose weight, it's easier to eat less than it is to exercise more, is what that's saying. And let me give you an example. A Big Mac hamburger is around 500 calories. And so let's say that's part of your normal lunch. You always go to McDonald's and get a Big Mac. And let's say you say, okay, I want to lose a few pounds. And so you could either lose the few pounds by just skipping the Big Mac and maybe having a salad or something instead, reducing the calories in. Or you could say, well, I'm going to keep eating the Big Mac, but I'm going to exercise more. So I'm going to try to jog every night and just burn through those 500 calories that way. Well, so how long do you have to jog to burn off 500 calories? Well, remember that chart I was showing a little while ago? It's about an hour. And so which is it easier to do, skip the Big Mac or run for an hour? So it's almost a no-brainer. Running for an hour is hard, especially if it's, towards the end of the day and you're tired and maybe it's cold or raining or something, it's going to be tough to go out there and just run really fast for an entire hour. It's just so much easier to say, I'm just going to skip the Big Mac and have an apple or a salad or something instead. So again, the point I'm making is that if you're trying to take off some pounds, it's far easier to focus on reducing the food than driving yourself to some sort of insane exercise program. Okay, so what I've been showing here is where the calories coming in are not equal to the calories going out, the calories being burned up. So these people are not in energy balance. If we imagine a person like this, so the amount of calories he takes in every day is exactly equal to the amount of calories that he uses every day, we say that that person is in energy balance. And so they're not going to gain or lose any significant amount of weight because as you can see here, the energy their body takes in is equal to the energy they expend. So the body just does not have to either store up any extra fat or use up any extra fat. And so they keep about the same amount of weight.
Okay, that is the end of our lecture on the digestive system. So as usual, I suggest that you now do the review questions, and I will see you in the next lecture.